ودعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Okay, I'll mute the... So, Alhamdulillah, last week we were at the number 6, right? We finished the 5 sciences, 5 knowledge of Fiqh Tahawwulat and the Nusus, the study of the sacred texts. So we are actually now supposed to be going through Sunnah Mawaqif and Dilala. So before we go into that, we just a quick recap, I think, of what we did last week. So we went through al-Hasanat, I think, and Fiqh al-Mustajaddat, right? So all these sciences, there are 5 sciences in total, which are subsumed under Fiqh Tahawwulat, amongst which is the science of all this human knowledge, which developments in human or acquired knowledge that is a product of human endeavor and effort, right? All the developments in technology, and especially those are which the Prophet has foretold, right? Which is mentioned in this book. I shared about this book, right? Anyone managed to download and read through? Okay, if you can, it's a good eye-opening, the way he ta'wil, the way he interpret the verses and the hadith and apply it to modern developments. So then we have knowledge of cosmic, natural, non-human, we could say, phenomena, ashrat. We mentioned a bit about what is ashrat istibaqiyah, ashrat istiqra'iyah, right? Cosmic portents, which happened before the era of the Prophet ﷺ, right? The azab of Qaum Nabi Hud, right? All these abnormal, signs. So they all come under ilmu ashrat al-kawniyat. So these matters, they continue till the end of times, where we have an abnormal sign, the smoke, and then the rising of the sun from the west. Right? All these are abnormal ashrat. And then we talk about Arab baina diyana wa tarikh, linking religion to history, which is basically desecularization, right? To desecularize study of history. So we look at history from the perspective of the nusus, or the text of the primary text of Islam, the Quran, the Sunnah, right? And I think I did not really go into the books here. There we have these 3 books. The first book is Takwin al-Adami. I think I went through a bit about that lah. This is a book by Habib Abu Bakar. We want to know more about his idea of linking the religion to history. This is one of the book, and there is also another book, At-Talid wa Tarif, and there's another one, if I'm not wrong, Masfufatul al-Masfufa. So those 3, I think, are the main books that link is his exploration of this linking religion to history lah. Okay, then basically, yeah, how do we look at human history, right? From Nabi Adam alayhi salam, all the stages, not just the life in this world, but prior to that, right? Because obviously there is a relation, there is a connection between our life on the period of Nabi Adam in the garden, right? And there's a connection between that and our life today, now, here on earth, and the next life, and so on. So yeah, it is a more thorough, more holistic look at human history, employing by taking the source of knowledge from the wahyu, right? Khabar Sadiq. So, and then we look, there's this book also, you can, it's in English, right? The book of Professor Said Naqib Al-Atas. She explores he actually finds out the timeline of basically the argument about the nature of man. Nabi Adam, he is not a product of evolution, right? And he tries to trace the timeline of Nabi Adam, when did he come to earth, based on the dates of the kings. Oh, let me see. So sorry. Some people in the waiting room. Okay. Okay. So those who just entered, we were just recapping. So we haven't begun proper. And so we just completed our recap of last week's, what did we discuss last week lah. Okay, so I think I touched a bit on mawaqif, right? So if you have experience studying usul fiqh, if you have studied the idea of sunnah, right? What is sunnah in the definition of the usulis, of the muhaddisin? Each of them have their definition of sunnah lah. So you would often hear sunnah qauliyah, right? Sunnah qauliyah meaning the Prophet's words. Sunnah fi'liyah, sunnah of the actions of the Prophet SAW, and sunnah takririyah. So these three is well known, right? Is well known what it is, the Prophet's words, action, and his approvals, right? So in Fiqh Tahawwulat, we have mawaqif and dilalah, two additional sunnah. So this is something that through istiqra, right, through reading of the text of the Tahawulat, we can arrive at this idea of mawqif. So last week we went through what is mawqif. Mawqif is literally a place where you stand lah, right? Literally a place where you stand. So in other words, it can also, it refers to stance, right? Your reaction, stance, your attitude towards something. So what is it in the text? What does it say? Sunnah mawaqif means standpoints, reality of the standpoint taken by the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or one of his well-guided, guided caliph lah, Khulafa ar-Rashidun, in matters which impose decisive and positive measures, of which of necessity will lead to sound judgment and good results. So that which requires decisive, decisions, decision making matters, right? Which leads to something that is good lah, and result is something that is good, right? And especially when there are no text guidance of wahyu, right? There's no Quranic verse which compel them to take a particular stance, right? Right. So there is no verse or guidance that for that issue. So they took a particular stance, and it leads to something that is good lah, in simple terms. So this is in the face of challenges, in the face of changes, not in normal circumstances. Right? In normal circumstances, the Prophet ﷺ, he acts, he talks, he has his takrirat. So these things falls under the sawabit, right? The sunnah, takririyah, fi'liyah. So, but this stands only in matters that pertain to tahawulat, right? matters that arise that are not, normal, not normal circumstances, not usual, mundane, routine things, right? So the sunnah is also termed as the fiqh of state, fiqhul hal, regarding what Allah decrees to take place by way of proper behavior or management in the time of crisis, right? So in the time of crisis, in the time of tahawul, there is change, there is something that arises, which makes necessary the following: guarding the tongue from abuse, inappropriate language, abuse, cursing, and so on and so forth. Guarding the hand from wrongfully shedding blood. The Prophet ﷺ said, a Muslim is the one who has safeguarded his hand and tongue from harming other Muslims. And so this is the guideline, the dalil for the two aforementioned syarat lah. Okay, so back to our slide. I will share the slide later. Maybe I need to see how some adjustments first. Okay, so it involves proper behavior management in difficult situations. So we want to do things that please Allah, right? Especially, it's easy to do so when, in normal circumstances. But when things happen which you don't expect, right? Trials, tribulations, fitan. So when these things happen, then how do we act? How do we conduct ourselves? So in order to have a guideline, you need to know the mawakif of those people who have, of course, first the Prophet lah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, maksum, right? His mawakif. How did he react to all these trials and tribulations? And then his companions, Khulafa ar-Rashidun, right? And then it doesn't stop there, because the term Khulafa, the concept of Khalifa, it is not limited to those who have political power, right? We have Khalifa, spiritual Khalifa, right? We'll see later the concept of Khalifa in the next chapter. So we want to know how to conduct ourselves, how to react in situations like fitnah, trials, tribulations. So this is where Sunnah al-Mawaqif has its practical application lah, practical function. So when you learn this, you don't fall into what certain sects of Muslim, like the Shia and all this, what they have fallen into, right? What they have fallen into because of their, they did not properly understand this mawqif. They did not really took it seriously, or follow this mawqif of the khulafa, right? They are following more of something, like emotions and not the nusus. They did not take judgment from the nas of the Prophet ﷺ and the mawqif of the khulafa. For example, right, when you look at Sayyidina Ali, right, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh, he was, when Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he became the caliph, right, became the Khalifa. What was the mawqif of Sayyidina Ali? Did he revolted, right? Did he not participate in the matters pertaining to shura, right? They have a shura. What is a shura? Basically the council of the senior sahabat, right? All those who make decisions, and they have a council of Ahlul Badr. So Sayyidina Ali did not protest, right? He did not protest. He did not fight for power. He did not, So his mawqif, this becomes something that as a guideline for us, right? Sunnatul Khulafa ar-Rashidina min ba'di. That's why they have a sunnah on their own. The sunnah of the Prophet, right, is not. We'll see the hadith. I think. See the next slide. Okay. So we'll see the hadith. of Irbad bin Sariyah. Okay, so this hadith is the very foundation of Sunnah al-Mawaqif. So this is where Habib Abu Bakar get this concept of Sunnah al-Mawaqif, and this is the dalil lah. If anyone asks you what is the dalil of Sunnah al-Mawaqif, this is the dalil. Right, the hadith of Irbad bin Sariyah, and this happened towards the end of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which it says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us a sermon, right, by which our hearts were filled with fear and our tears came to our eyes. So we said, Ya Rasulullah, it is as though this is a farewell sermon, so counsel us. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I counsel you to fear Allah. Isma'u wa ati'u. Usikum bi taqwallah was-sam'i wa ta'ah. Right? So even if a slave were to become your amir, so even if a slave were to become your amir, your leader, right? Obey and listen. So this has an idea of something that has to do with politics, right? Something to do with leadership. Verily he among you who lives long will see great controversy. So this controversy has some the context of the hadith, controversy surrounding what? Political power. So you must keep to my sunnah and the sunnah of the Khulafa ar-Rashidin. So this part I highlight here, my sunnah and sunnah of the Khulafa ar-Rashidin. So what is it that, you know, if someone say the sunnah of the Prophet, the idea that comes to your mind immediately will be what? His sayings, right? His hadith, his actions, and then his takrirat, his approvals. So this is what comes to your mind when someone say the sunnah of the Prophet. But then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, my sunnah and the sunnah of the Khulafa. So what is this sunnah of the Khulafa, right? So if he say my sunnah and sunnah Khulafa, that means he ataf, right? There's ataf wa sunnati wa sunnah Khulafa. So whenever there's ataf in Nahu, they say what? Yaqtadi al-mughayara. Al-atfu yaqtadi al-mughayara. That means the benda yang you atafkan, the thing that you join together, these two things, they are not the same, right? You cannot, I mean, what's the point of saying my sunnah and the sunnah Khulafa Rashidin when both are the same thing? So obviously these two are different things. So that means the Khulafa have their sunnah. What is their sunnah? So this is what we say the mawqif, right? The stance, how they respond, how they react to Tahawwulat. So al-Rashidin al-Mahdiyin. So later on we'll go through what is Rashidin al-Mahdiyin. There are implications to these terms. Right? Ittaqu da'wah. Cling to it stubbornly. Literally with your molatif. Beware of newly invented methods, for verily every bid'ah is misguided. So especially in matters of political power and the fight for power and leadership. So this is the basis of Sunnah al-Mawaqif. Right? Next we look at the Sunnah Dilala. As for Sunnah Dilala, proof and evidence. This is a Sharia, not really restraining factor, more like guideline. Sharia guideline. In Fiqh Da'wah. Right. It makes clear the doing of a given thing or refraining from it, which were not covered within the derived and inferred rulings of the previous scholars. This can be applied under the basis of the prophetic tradition. Man sanna fil Islam sunnatan hasana. Whoever initiates, right, in Islam a good sunnah, right, will have his own reward and reward of all those who act upon it after him. So let's look at what it actually is trying to say. So the masdar of sunnah dilala is actually the source of it, the inspiration of it is from usul fiqh lah. Usul fiqh we have sunnah of the qawliyah, fi'liyah, takrir. But this dilala is something that is not explicit, right? It is something that has an indication, right? You can take the irshad, right? It has an irshad from the prophetic sunnah, right? And you apply it in da'wah, fiqh da'wah. Not just da'wah, but in the fiqh of da'wah. So da'wah we know is what those things that you do lah. Basically you know all the activities like teaching, like giving admonition and so on and so forth. All this menyampaikan, to convey, right? To convey the message. So that is da'wah itself. Fiqh da'wah is the understanding of the da'i, the concept of the da'i, the da'wah itself, and the mad'u. Right? You have the action of da'wah. You have the person who is giving da'wah. You have the person you're calling towards, a particular calling towards Allah. Right? So to the understanding of that, how do we that as time changes, right? As in different situations, time, place, right? Different audience. How do we change our approach? How we renew the approach? Right? We look at the first lesson. I think first or second lesson there is this. We talk about the samarah. I think of Tahawwulat will be to tajdid lughah fiqh da'wah, to renew this approach of fiqh da'wah. Not just the da'wah itself, the fiqh itself also we need to understand, right? How we approach all this, the da'i, the mad'u, all these things we need to relook into it, renew it in the light of the tahawulat, right? The light of tahawulat. So it's a legal guideline. In fiqh da'wah, it is based on inductive reading of Quran and Prophetic Hadith. It is to establish limits on specific actions. What should be done, what can be done, what cannot be done. Right? Improvising, right? Man sanna fil Islam sunnah hasanah. So this fiqh sunnah dilalah is to prevent misunderstanding, right, of certain groups who claim that whatever the Prophet did not do, you cannot do. Right? This is their approach. Right? It's a mistaken approach. Right? So we say that there is dilalah in the Prophet's sunnah which allow certain things to be done, right? Even though it was not practiced during the time of the Prophet, right? So we can see that the Sahabat, right, the Khulafa themselves, they initiated things which were prior to that, prior to their initiation, it wasn't practiced. Like Sayyidina Osman, radiallahu anh, what did he initiate? He initiated the azan, right, prior to the waktu salat. Right? If you go to Makkah, Madinah, you go to Friday prayers, for example. There's azan before, right? Azan before waktu. You have to call people to prayer, right? Because as the society was, as it grew, people tend to come late for Salat Jumaat because they were living a bit further away and they were engaged in their activities. And so he initiated this additional azan to call people to prayer earlier so that they will come earlier. So we have Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh who initiated the 20 raka'ats of Tarawih jama'atan, right, in jama'ah. So all these things prior to prior to their time, it wasn't there. It was not done. So they innovated, right? They initiated, they improvised. according to the changing circumstances. So these changing circumstances is what we call tahawulat, right? The changing situations, social, political, economic, whatever lah. So how do they get this idea? It's from dilalah, sunnah dilalah. So this specific hadith, right? The basis of it is the whoever introduced a good practice, man sanna sunnatan hasana. Another narration is fa'umila biha ba'dahu kana lahu ajruha. And this practice after that, he gets the reward. And likewise, whoever initiates evil practice. So some detractors, they would say, oh, this sanna means ahya. But that's not the case, right? We have another narration that say, man ahya sunnati inda fasadi ummati. And that is explicit, ahya sunnati. That was different. So the word sanna here cannot be translated or interpreted as ahya. So sanna here means to initiate, right? From non-existence, right? Another support for what we say here is the narration in Sahih Muslim. And at the bottom here, لا تقتل نفس ظلما إلا كان على ابن آدم الأول كفل من دمها لأنه كان أول من سن القتل. So this is, it says that لا تقتل نفس ظلما, a soul, a human being is not killed in an unjust manner, except that the son of Adam, the first son of Adam, right, Qabil, right, Qabil will get the sin, will get a share of the what do you call it? A share of the dosa lah. He will get a share of the dosa, right? Any murder on earth, right? There is not unjust killing of a human soul. The son of Adam, the first son of Adam, Qabil, will get a share of the sin. Because لأنه كان أول من سن قتلا, because he was the first one to sanna, to initiate, is to do something that has no prior example, right? He was the first person to kill, to murder, right? So sanna means to initiate something that has no prior existence or example, right? So this is the basis of sunnah ad-dilalah, right? So what do we do with the sunnah dilalah? And so it gives the idea that actions that are not done in the generations of the Sahabat or the Prophet ﷺ, right? They can be permissible, right? So for instance, what our ulama have come up with, right? With the changing circumstances of society, right? Drifting away from religion, drifting away from their awareness of munasabat, right? We have munasabat, events, Islamic events, calendar events, Isra, Mi'raj, Hijrah, Maulid, all these are major events that, of significance that you need the society to, the ummah to remember and to be connected to, right? So when they see that the people are drifting away, especially when they change, instead of using, the Hijri calendar, they are more attached to and more familiar with the Gregorian calendar, right? Now to the extent that they do not, they are, when you ask them what month, Islamic month we are in, they can't remember. They can't, they have to check, the date, they have to check the date. They have to check which month they are in, So they are in that state. What has happened, right? What has happened? How did it happen? How did they end up like that? So this drifting away from this munasabat has led to the establishment of this kind of practices lah, basically events commemorating these events. So we need to link people to their history. Is an effort to link them, the Muslims, to their history. Utilizing modern means and technologies of the religion and spread da'wah and Quranic teaching. So these are also, the problem with those who, the detractors lah, those who do not agree to these things. They dichotomize, they separate bid'ah fi din, bid'ah fi dunya, which is something new also actually, right? It resembles the secular approach of dichotomy lah between the sacred and the profane, religious, non-religious, religious, secular. So, and this is the problem that we have to make them understand that, there is no such thing. There is no such thing. Okay, so sorry. In the waiting room. Okay, for those who just came in, we are discussing about sunnah dilala. So sunnah dilala basically is a sunnah of whoever initiates a good sunnah, he gets a reward of those who practice until the day of judgment. So we mentioned about all this establish the ulama, what they do to connect the ummah to religious events, right? And this is a kind of sunnah hasanah lah, to commemorate Maulid, Hijrah, Isra Mi'raj, all these things, right? To connect the ummah to their history, right? When there's a tahawulat, right? What is the tahawulat? The drifting away, the secularization of the Muslim world, and the using of the Gregorian calendar. They drift away, they get disconnected from their history, from their calendar, from their events. So another one is utilizing technology, modern means to serve Islam, to serve da'wah, right? Using technology in the mosque, using technology to teach. Actually, this is not something new, but even in the time, centuries after, right? The Sahabat, their era, they have this printing of books, writing of books, mushaf, printing of mushaf, building of schools, and using technologies from, paper making it doesn't come from the Muslim world, right? Paper making, all these things, technology come from China, for example. So all these things employed in religion, right, is part of religion. We don't dichotomize between the bid'ah of religion and bid'ah of the world, right? No such thing. So these practices are encompassed by the concept of the good sunnah and the righteous sunnah. Examples include celebrating all these major events in Islamic history. Okay, so basically this is the idea of sunnah ad-dilalah, right? Sunnah dilalah. It has no explicit or prior example, right? It is not from books of fiqh, but you can get this idea through the reading of the dilalah, indication of irshad of the prophetic narration, especially this one, right? Whoever starts a good sunnah will have a reward of it. So that if you look, once you've understood this, look back at the definition. Dhabitun syar'i. There is a guideline lah. Basically, it guides you when you do da'wah, right? Fi fiqh da'wah. That's right. Fiqh da'wah. It guides you in the field of fiqh of da'wah, right? To understand what is the approach that I can use in this zaman, right? What has happened? What has changed amongst the people? What can be done, to in my da'wah efforts, in the efforts of the calling them to Allah. So you hadid salama fi'il shay, it determines whether doing something is okay or not, right? Mimma lam yantawi tahta istidlalat al-ulama as-sabiqin, from that which has not come has not been included under the inferences or the istidlal of the ulama of the past. So ulama of the past did not produce that, give you that legal guideline, but you come up with it, you follow this legal guideline, you come up and with something that is a sunnah hasanah, right? Following the qa'idah of the nas of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man sanna fil Islam sunnatan hasanah falahu ajruha wa ajru man amila biha. So initiating something new. Then the 8th lesson, the understanding of the rightly guided caliphs in the context of fiqh of transition and changes. So the fiqh of transition and changes has its own concept of caliphate, right? Khalifah. As we know, maybe prior to this, you think that Khalifah, there are 4, right? Khulafa Rashidin, Abu Bakar, Umar, Uthman, Ali. Then after that, the more you, when you read up and you learn Fiqh Tahawwulat, perhaps, or maybe you have learned somewhere else about the Caliphate of Sayyidina Hassan. The Prophet's narration was that Al-Khilafah Ba'di 30 aman, 30 years, which includes the time of Sayyidina Hassan. And then they include also the time of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Sayyidina Umar bin Abdul Aziz, who is that there's a reference to him in one of the hadith, I believe, is Ashadju Bani Umayyah. So he is included within the definition of the Khulafa lah. So he, and also we widen it in Tahawulat, the concept is much wider, because prior to this, you only think that it is someone who has political power and someone with knowledge, right? So basically in Tahawulat, it is more than that, right? So a person may not have political power, but he is an authority, right? He has sanad, he has adalah, uprightness, which qualifies him as a Khalifa, right? Fi qarar al-ilm. So for example, Sayyidina Hassan, he abdicated, he tanazzul, meaning when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu also wanted the position of the caliphate. This is after Sayyidina Hassan had taken the bay'at. People has pledged to him. Right? Many of the Muslims at that time have pledged to Sayyidina Hassan, and he has taken their pledge. He was the caliph already. So when he saw that there is a conflict, there is on the part of Sayyidina Muawiyah, who wanted to take over, wanted to become the Khalifa. Instead of fighting this rebellion, right, it is considered a rebellion, right? So technically, he could, fight them. It is legally permissible for him as a caliph to fight any rebellion, to suppress any rebellion. So instead, he did not, right? He did not go by the book. You can say that. He did not go by the book. So this is a mawqif. This is sunnatul mawaqif. So this is his stance. Instead of going by the book, right, he took a stance because he saw that it is better to avoid this countering them, taking up violence. So he abdicated, right? He said, okay, I'll give up this, even though I have more right to it, right? Even though I have more right to it, I shall give it up to prevent the bloodshed, right, amongst Muslims. So to the extent that some of his followers even was angry, right? Why did you abdicate? You have ya muzillal mu'minin. You have, wahai yang telah, or you who have abased the believers. Right? The believers have put their oath of allegiance to you, but you have abased them, something like that. So he said, he replied, I only do so to save you from being killed, right? So this is a mawqif that he took, but that did not mean that he, after this, he was no longer a Khalifa. Right? So he was still a Khalifa, even though he had no political hegemony, right? So this qarar, if you read the books of Habib Abu Bakr, he likes to use this term qararul ilm and qararul hukm. So this hegemony, this dominance of ilm and power, right? Which at the end of times, it will return back to Al-Mahdi. Al-Mahdi will have the qararul ilm and qararul hukm. And now you see the leaders, they do not have the qararul ilm. They have qararul hukm. The Muslim leaders, right? They have qararul hukm. They have that hegemony of power, but not the knowledge, right? It's not referring to just, superficial knowledge of Islam, but rather deep knowledge of Islam that encompasses all the thawabit and mutaghayyirat. So this hegemony of knowledge of power, Sayyidina Hassan, he lost the power, but he still had the ilm, and therefore he still is a Khalifa. Right? So this concept of Khalifa in Tahawwulat is wider. Right? So it is the sharat is the sanad and adalah, which we mentioned, right? Sanad and adalah. So those whoever, for example, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, Sayyidina Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he had that adalah and sanad, right? And he is considered a caliph. So whoever has that amongst the ulama, based on this narration that the Prophet ﷺ said, yarithu hadal ilm fi kulli khalafin uduluh. This knowledge, I think, is in the previous slide. I think I shared this hadith in the English translation. يرث هذا العلم في كل خلف عدوله ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين وابتلال وانتحال المبتلين. In every century, there are those who are reliable authorities who will preserve this knowledge, rejecting the changes made by extremists, the plagiarisms of those who make false claims, and the interpretations of the ignorant. So this is the wiratha an-nabawiyya, wiratha, inheritance. Prophetic inheritance is what? Knowledge, right? So this, the Prophet in a narration used yarithu. In another narration used yahmilu. So as if to indicate wiratha can be through genealogy, through nasab, right? Ahlul Bayt, right? They inherit. For those who are other than the Ahlul Bayt, they carry, they yahmil, right? They don't inherit, but they it is transmitted to them, right? And they bring it with them. So this is a twofold way of gaining that level of status of being those who are carriers or transmitters of this knowledge. Yeah. Udul, those other than being the upright. يرث هذا العلم في كل خلف عدوله. So a person who fulfills the condition of adalah and sanad, he is considered to fulfill the concept of Khalifah in Tahawwulat. So this is what it says in the book. Concept of Khilafah. So the understanding of the rightly guided caliphs. Understanding meaning the concept. Mafhum al-Khilafah fi Tahawwulat. So it's a comprehensive term. It's not limited to having political power only, right? The condition being immunity, uprightness, which we have mentioned, there are 4, right? If you remember, 4. Not committing major sins, not persisting in minor sins, not participating in any public verbal abuse or shedding of blood. So from the time of the righteously guided caliphs until the time when Allah SWT decrees such a matter as well, it did come to pass. Fiqh Tahawwulat, they refers to those people of the Prophet ﷺ addressed when he said, he amongst you live will see many changes. Man ya'ish minkum, innahu man ya'ish minkum, satara ikhtilafan kathira. Many ikhtilaf, controversies. Then follow the sunnah, my sunnah and the sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs. So these rightly guided caliphs, the term here is not just the 4, 5 or 6 khulafa, but those whoever fulfills the above syarat. Okay. So that means at every time and age, you will have people who are upon this path, right? Upon this path, and who are you can take as your examples, right? Wallahu alam. I hope you've understood today's sharing. We just have a short summary lah through the quiz. See whether you have grasped today's lesson. Okay, so the main difference is that it is in the face of Tahawwulat, and it is not confined to just the Prophet ﷺ. It applies to all his khulafa. As for stances, I know mawqif means stances, but it's not just stances, but it's stances in the face of abnormal circumstances, fitnah, trials, tribulations, right? So it's not just stances, it's more specific. Okay, so we saw this earlier. We went through the term sanna, man sanna fil Islam, sunnah hasana. Whoever initiates something, right? We saw the example from the hadith about the son of Adam who killed sanna qatal. He initiated murder. He was the first to kill without a just reason. So we discussed the meaning of that. And so when he abdicated from the seat of caliphate, he wasn't a Khalifat in the hukum sense, in the governance sense. Right? So he was only in the caliphate in the sense of a leadership in ilm, knowledge. So it's still a caliphate, but not in the sense of a ruler. Yes, true. True, there's two conditions, which is sanad and adalah. Sorry, this part is haven't gone through. It's okay. If you have done a prior reading of the book, yeah. So if you look at the next chapter, if you have read the next chapter, right, the marhala, you will see that there's a marhala of prophethood, there's a marhala of the khulafa, marhala of, you see, it's not like classified by centuries, whether it's Hijri or Gregorian or whatever. It doesn't follow the, obviously it doesn't follow Western one, and it's not according to dynasty. So it's based on prophetic texts, nubuwah, khulafa, and then al-mulk, al-adud. These are all from prophetic texts, right? Then we have marhala ghutha'iyah from prophetic texts, right? Duhaimas, all these marhala, they are all from the prophetic texts. So this is just can also say it's a sneak peek of next week's topic lah, which is about the marahil. Wallahu a'lam bisawab. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. If you have any questions, you can post the questions now. We still have a bit of time. Apologies to those who were kept waiting in the waiting room. Yeah, I did not notice the notification. So okay, I think since there are no questions, I think this Sunnah Dilalah and Sunnah Dilalah is probably one of the more challenging concepts lah for some people, right? may take a while to understand what it actually applies to. But I think I've tried my best to simplify it. So inshallah we'll read more about it later on the later levels, later texts. Examples, more examples there. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.